I don't trust President Trump as far as I can throw him. He constantly changes his mind. It's you just don't know who you're dealing with. He signed that deal with Japan at what was it, $550 billion they're investing. Last time I checked, Japan they buy about $79 billion of products off the U.S. We buy about $349 billion of products. So Japan and the rest of the countries around the world have quite a bit to catch up to what we purchase off the U.S.
So there, Ford is talking about a deal that was announced late last night that the White House is actively promoting this morning, essentially one of their first major trade agreements since Donald Trump promised to get 90 deals in 90 days. This one with Japan, though, keeps the tariff in place. 15% tariff remains on Japanese exports into the United States, used to be 2.5%. And crucially, that also includes the automobile sector. And Japan is also required to create, as you heard Ford mention, this investment fund of $550 billion to be invested in the United States. This is all part of Donald Trump's demands. Why do we care about this? Well, this really does set the tone for all the other trade negotiations. And it also sort of confirms the view of Mark Carney that it is unlikely Canada is going to get through this process without some kind of tariffs still left in place. So if the tariff on Japan is 15%, what ultimately will be the tariff on Canadian goods? We know Trump wants to raise it to 35% starting August 1st on goods that are not covered by the current USMCA CUSMA agreement. Will that be the case in 9 days' time now? Will we still be facing those tariffs? Will Canada be required to create this massive investment fund to pour money into the United States? Carney has said he's not going to sign a deal if it's not a good deal for Canada. Looking at the deal that Japan signed, no one really seems to think that's a good deal for Japan. Their domestic government is in political disarray right now. That may have contributed to that decision, but that deal does not bode well for Canada signing a trade agreement in the next 9 days that is beneficial to this country, as Mark Carney said he would require.
Yeah, something is going on. With less than a week left for Canada to reach a trade deal with President Trump or face additional tariffs, Prime Minister Mark on Tuesday downplayed the possibility of a breakthrough and suggested that Canada might walk away empty-handed. Mr. Carney spoke after an emergency meeting of Canada's 10 provinces and 3 territories that he convened in response to Trump's threat to impose 35% tariffs on Canadian export starting on August 1st. If you don't know, Japan recently made a decision to strike a deal with the US. This has offended a lot of people in Canada. It is important we take an exclusive look into what is going on exactly. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please check and do that.
Initial take on this deal. First, what does it mean for the U.S. markets, this deal? What sectors, what areas of this market do you see benefiting?
I think it's a great deal for both countries, and the reason is that Japan's got a lot of fantastic technology that it can offer to the U.S. In areas like semiconductor fabrication, software, even some medical technology where Japan has certain diseases specific to the aging society, where it can offer fantastic technology to the U.S., and it will now be able to do that without the risk of excessive tariffs. Of course, it's a great deal for the Japanese as well in specific industries where they have a great relationship with the U.S. market.
So it cuts tariffs in half, down to 15% right now. You mentioned chips and you mentioned some other parts. What about the other side of the coin, the fact that we have a better trade deal? Rice is one of the things mentioned, also Boeing jets. What other companies or sectors here in the U.S. do you see being beneficiary of exporting to Japan on the back of this deal?
Rice and agriculture, I think, is a huge thing. And I think it's very important to recognize that they waited until the recent election in Japan. There was an election in Japan at the weekend. They waited till that election was done before they announced the trade deal. Why? Because farmers are a massive voting bloc. And obviously, rice imports are electorally controversial topic. But the fact that they've been able to do that rice import agreement now by a lot of, I think, U.S. rice and agricultural products is a major opportunity for the U.S. And also a very important opportunity for Japan. I live in Japan, and obviously rice is a huge staple here. There's a massive shortage of rice because of the aging population of farmers. Rice has been very protected. If Japan opens that market, it's very important for the Japanese consumer, very important for U.S. agriculture, and I think it means a much more flexible relationship between the two countries over time. You mentioned Boeing real quick as well, and that's a huge opportunity as well because Japan's obviously hugely dependent on U.S. Aerospace technology. Japan also works with Boeing very closely in things like carbon fiber supply, many of the sensors and motors that are used in aircraft design. And I think a close relationship with Boeing will be extremely important for Japan, for many of the companies as well as for the
Yes, this trade deal is being hailed as one of the largest in history, with President Trump emphasizing its potential to reshape trade dynamics between the US and Japan. The agreement not only address tariff concern but also foster deeper economic collaborations, which could have lasting implications for both countries' economy. From my observations, this is important to both countries. I don't know whatever thing these people struggle to always devote attention to. When you take a look at these, yes, when you take a look at these key features like tariff reductions, this deal lowers tariffs on Japan automobiles from 25% to 15%, which is crucial as these vehicles account for a significant portion of Japan's export to the US. Additionally, reciprocal tariffs of 15% will be applied to Japanese export to the US, down from previously threatened higher rate. That is one. When you go down, investment commitment, Japan has committed to investing 550 billion into US economy. This investment is expected to create numerous jobs and strengthen economic ties between the two nations. Market access. The agreement opens Japan market to American products, including auto, rice, and other agricultural goods. This is seen as a significant opportunity for US exporters.
With Japan, you can see stock futures this morning up a little bit before the opening bell. We'll see where it goes once the markets open at 9:30. CNN's Matt Egan is here to talk about this deal with Japan, which is a major trading partner.
Yeah, absolutely, John. And look, for weeks it felt like all we were getting was escalation on the trade front. Now we're starting to get a string of deals, the biggest one being this U.S.-Japan deal. Let's go through some of the things that are in this. So a $500+ billion investment from Japan into the United States. We're still awaiting some of the key details on that, but a Japanese official says that this is going to be an investment into key industries like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. Japan also, according to President Trump, agreeing to open up trade with the U.S. on cars, rice, and other agriculture. Now, there's this 15% tariff the U.S. is going to charge on imports from Japan, and that tariff critically extends to cars and car parts. However, a 50% tariff still remains on steel and on aluminum. Now, just to remind you of where we are when it comes to U.S. tariffs on Japan, back in early April, the president threatened and actually briefly imposed a 24% tariff on Japan, one of America's closest allies. And in just over a week, tariffs from the U.S. on Japan were set to go up to 25%. This deal, again, says 15%. So better than the worst case that a lot of people had been worried about, but also higher than tariffs, of course, had been before the president took office. Now, Japan is a major U.S. trading partner. It's the fifth biggest source of imports into the United States. Last year alone, the U.S. imported almost $150 billion of goods from Japan. Now, as far as the market reaction, we looked at U.S. stock futures moving higher, not dramatically higher, but I should note the Dow is just a few hundred points away from its first all-time high since December. We're seeing a more emphatic reaction from Japanese markets. The Nikkei spiking more than 3%, and auto stocks, Japanese auto stocks that trade in the U.S., Toyota, Honda moving dramatically higher, more than 10% higher for Toyota and Honda apiece. And that's because, again, there's possibly a competitive advantage here, right? Autos that are being imported from Japan face that 15% tariff. They avoid the 25% tariff. But I should just note that one group that does not seem happy about this is the Detroit automakers. Reuters is quoting a trade group that represents GM, Ford, and Chrysler owner Stellantis, and they're saying that any trade deal that charges a lower tariff for Japanese imports with very little U.S. content than what's being charged on North American imports would be a bad deal for U.S. industry and for U.S. auto workers.
I believe you've seen that some people are worried about this trade deal, but at the end of the day, we are going to observe the end of this. I want to appreciate people supporting me on daily basis. I don't want to make the video long. I just wanted to report so you can see the truth or what exactly is going on. Please, if you don't understand how I speak, drop under the comment sections. Let me know. This is the fourth survey I'm struggling to do when it concerns this, because I see a lot of, I don't know if they are Libras for they struggle to bash me every day on the comment sections. I take into considerations people's opinions, reasons. I try every single day to adjust, improve in these videos. If you see short clips at the end of my videos, that is for the wider algorithm. This platform hardly take up videos on this channel to recommend, so we try every single day, to do all sort of things for this to happen.
So that if you then
barriers, don'ts, landmines, limitations,
so many rules.
my choices are mine, making this easy. People line up for my advice. And you're walking away like I'm stupid. It's why marriage infertility
has been overwhelming. The lies and their amplification.
This is not going to end.
He says, but what if he says self-defense?
There's no self-defense because kids in here and resolve this issue is called conflict resolution.
Again, the evidence is still coming in.
This is definitely a self-defense case, because it always is one until you...
Because she's fearful.
Registration Act is
Talking about term, and you will be very...
Once again, the field was littered with Winter does.
And black people don't want to live around ratchet black.
how bad is his reputation going to be?
It's bad.
You need to connect the dots.
Going to carry a level of weight.
Games and out to dinner with their daughter.